Okay, hey guys, I think we figured out the camera situation. Sorry for that delay there. But anyways, I am out at Deweese Island, and that is where our live feeder cam setup is. We set our live feeder cam up here in the spring, and we set it up here because we get a lot of painted buntings in this area, and we wanted to be able to show you all the buntings as they were coming through. We are still getting a few painted buntings here, but they're on their way out, so it won't be for too much longer. And also, we've been struggling to get any kind of big variety at the feeders here right now because the Grackles are taking over like crazy. And I know that here on Deweese is not the only spot we're having this problem. A lot of you all are too. So I'm gonna kind of walk through a couple of different ways that you can help keep Grackles off your feeders. And then we'll kind of show you how we rearrange our setup here. So there's a few different things that you can do to keep Grackles away from your feeder, and that would be safflower seed, choosing particular feeders that they can't get into, or just taking your feeders down temporarily. Sometimes that works as well. And then another thing we like to do is actually give them their own feeder, kind of separate from the feeders that you don't want them on. And it's raining out here. Of course, the one day it hasn't rained in weeks, and here it is, but it feels great. So anyways, on Judy's feeder station, we had a large tray feeder, and we were putting a really good seasonal seed blend in there. We also had a dinner bell with a seed cylinder, a hummingbird feeder, and we kind of were changing out the foods here and there. But now that the Grackles are taking over, we've got to change up our game plan some. So the first thing that we're gonna do is the big tray feeder that was on our live feeder cam, we are gonna only put safflower seed in there. So safflower is this little white seed that kind of looks like rice a little bit. It does have a shell, so it's not considered a no-mess, but your Grackles and crows, they don't care for safflower seed at all, but cardinals and a lot of your smaller birds do. So this is a really good option to put in your tray feeder or even your tube feeder. You're always gonna get a bigger variety of birds with a well-rounded seed blend than you will just the safflower. But right now, with Grackles taking over, you don't get much variety with them hanging out either. So the safflower seed is what we're gonna put in our tray feeder. On the live feeder cam, you probably noticed we've always had a caged tube feeder up there because that is one of the painted bunting's favorite feeders, and it's filled with white millet seed, which it still is. And this tube feeder here, it's a little wonky, there we go. The tube feeder is large, the holes are small enough to keep out the Grackles, and the cage is far enough away from the tube that they can't reach halfway in and get to the seed. So that's really important if you're looking for a caged feeder to keep out those larger birds. They're not all created equal. So if you're looking to save a few pennies, you just want to make sure that the mesh is at least an inch and a half, and that it's a good, 5 inches or so from the feeder, or they can stick their heads in and still get food out. And if there's any way they can get into it, they're gonna figure it out because they're really smart birds, which actually makes them pretty cool. So we're gonna keep that one up, and because the painted buntings are kind of on their way out and the Grackles are taking over, we'll probably put some different seed in there too, not just the millet seed anymore, but we'll leave some millet, a blend in there. That way the painted buntings will still have something to eat. So on our dinner bell feeder, that's this feeder here. Judy had already swapped over to a safflower cylinder, which was really helpful. You didn't see them on the safflower cylinder, so that really helped a lot. So that's this one here, but I'm gonna let the birds finish eating this one, but I'm gonna go ahead and put the cage around it so that the birds get used to the cage, and once the safflower cylinder is gone, we can swap it out for another kind of cylinder that will attract a bigger variety of birds. So the cylinders just go on the dinner bell feeder like that. Let me put the cage on first. If you're using the cylinders in your dinner bell feeder, the cage option works really well because the cylinder is far enough in the middle of the dinner bell that the Grackles can't really reach it. But if you were to dump seed in your dinner bell feeder, sometimes they can, do what I was saying earlier and stick their head in halfway and still be able to get food out. So I'm gonna let Judy screw that on so I don't use up too much of y'all's time. And if I were to say I didn't have Grackle poop on me right now, that would be a lie, because they're pooping all over the place, and I wiped down the feeders some, but that's another reason why you don't really want the Grackles around. I mean, I think they're really cool birds. I like to feed them in our yard, but you just don't want them taking over the feeders in such large numbers that you don't get the songbirds that you want to get, and that they just make a mess all over your porch or your yard. Okay, so now we're gonna have 2 feeders with cages on them, and I'm gonna show you a couple of other things that we're adding to our feeder that I'm not sure that we may have to tweak in the future, which will be fun to watch. So this feeder here holds the bark butter, and this one's really fun. You just spread the bark butter right on here. If you're on any of the local birding pages, there's a really sweet lady named Marcy, and she's been taking some great photos of different birds on a feeder very similar to this. This one has a perch, so what I'm a little concerned about is, even though the perch is smaller, that the Grackles are still going to be able to land on it and get the bark butter, especially because the bark butter is so delicious and they love it. So they're probably going to do whatever they want to do to get the bark butter off. So if we do find that they're landing on here, what Judy's gonna do is just chop this perch right off. They have a hard time clinging onto things. So feeders that require just a clinging action can also be really helpful in keeping the Grackles away, especially if you have a feeder just for your Grackles in another location, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute. So we are going to hang this one up because I want to give that variety. Right now with just the safflower seed, you're not going to get as many birds. So this is going to help add some variety, and again, we're going to take this perch off if we find the Grackles clinging onto it. Another feeder I'm going to put up there just because I'm here right now, and this is our promo for the month. It's our mini dinner bell feeder. Isn't it cute? And we've got Hoot on here, which he is a blend of sunflower seeds, nuts, and fruit. And they're all a little different because they hand put these little details on, which is cute. But I'm gonna lower this roof on him real low, just like that. And there's not a whole lot of perching room here either, especially with this dome lowered. So if you have a dome feeder or even our dinner bell, before you add a cage to it or try safflower, just if you already have the feeder, you can try lowering that dome all the way down. Sometimes if they're desperate and you don't have another food source out for them, they'll still cling on here, but a lot of times it'll be too difficult for them and it's not worth their time. So we are gonna put this guy out here, again, trying to get that variety. If we find that the Grackles are getting on this, we're gonna move it to their special feeding station, because really the goal is to keep all Grackles off of our songbird feeding station. So anyways, that guy's gonna go up and we'll tweak if we need to. All right, so that's gonna be our feeder plan for our feeder station, but we are going to add on an additional feeder to Judy's porch here, and I'm gonna use this really large tray feeder. So there's already a big tray feeder on her one feeder pole. Grackles love an open buffet, actually all birds do. And in this feeder, I poured the leftover sunflower seeds that they literally picked out all the peanuts from the blend that we had on the tray feeder, because that's their favorite food. But in order not to waste it, I just went ahead and dumped the sunflower seeds in there, and they'll eat those too. We're also going to put in the peanuts for the Grackle feeder, because this is their favorite food, and we're hoping that if we give them their favorite food in their own section and we provide foods that they don't like and feeders that are hard for them to get into, that we won't have as many Grackles, or hopefully any Grackles, on our songbird feeding station. I'm using peanuts out of the shell because we're on Deweese Island and there's a lot of critters out here, but no squirrels, which is shocking. But we still have raccoons, rats, things like that. We're right on the marsh. So we're going to give them peanuts out of the shell. They also like peanuts in the shell, and those are a little cheaper, but again, to keep things clean and tidy, we're using peanuts out of the shell to entice them to their own feeding station. We're also gonna use bark butter bits because they love those too, and these have a lot of fat, protein in them. Other birds will probably pick at it too, and we're just trying to keep that variety out. So, oh, I got one more special treat for our Grackles because I actually do love them, even though they're a pain in the butt. But we have this little seed raccoon, and he's just a hanging ornament, but he's going to be plopped in there and probably pecked to pieces in just a couple hours. But they're getting that little special treat too. One other thing I want to point out, because we're about to redo the feeder stations, and if you tune into our live cam often, you'll notice that there's still not going to be a whole lot of birds coming to the feeders in the next couple of weeks. For one, that's because we're switching things around, and birds they're funny. They like what they're used to. And so that's one thing that's going to slow down the bird activity. The other thing is it's already slowed down some because the Grackles were taking over the feeders. So the birds have to kind of learn that there's a safe place for them to feed now, where they're not going to just be chased away by the Grackles. And then the other thing is another issue I'm sure y'all are all having right now is that it's fall. So there's a lot of natural food out, and the birds don't come to the feeders as often in the fall as they do during the other seasons. But that being said, it's still really important to keep your feeders out this time of year, because the birds will remember that reliable food source during the winter time, and you'll get more birding activity at your feeders if you keep your feeders full and maintained than you will if you just decide to let them go dry until the feeding picks up again. So in order to get that really great winter bird feeding activity, you're gonna wanna make sure that you keep your feeders full even during the slower months. All right, so now that I've shown you the things that we're gonna do, those are all your tips and tricks, and I'll type something up in a Facebook post another time. If you don't have time to catch the whole video, I'll jot down all the pointers for you guys at some point. But we're gonna go ahead and just hang up all the feeders and show you what we're doing. So on to our feeders. Okay, I'll let you hold. Judy's gonna hold the camera for me. And it's really funny that it is raining so much here because we haven't had any rain. I knew the second that we decided that we were gonna, or that I was gonna come out here, which I've been needing to do also for a month or longer, that this would happen. So you're welcome, guys. Oh, and Judy can show you the
hummingbird feeder.
Oh, the hummingbird feeder is also going to stay up because the hummingbirds are still passing through. Judy mentioned that it's really slowed down at her feeders, which could be part the Grackles, but also they are headed out, and this is an island, so they may head out here a little earlier than they do in the mainland, but we're still gonna put our hummingbird feeder out. We like to say to keep it out for at least 2 weeks after you've seen your last hummingbird. So hummingbird feeder will also go back up. Grackles haven't been doing anything with that, so. All right. You can kind of show, if you want to show them the view here, it's amazing, while I kind of move everything over to the station. Or you can tell them some of the birds you've been seeing.
I was going to say, we've got egrets out there. We just had a flock of winter birds come in. About 7 blue-winged teal just landed and then took off again. And then there are anhinga and gulls. Sometimes there's an alligator out there. And if you look all the way across over there, you can see a pole that sticks up. That's where our eagles nest. So we're looking at trying to make that visible for people as well. And as you can see, the Grackles are leaving a mess here on my porch. So we're working on trying to intervene so that they have their own things but are less likely to land here on the porch.
Fingers crossed.
I know.
Okay, so this is where the feeder station is, and then over here, Judy already had this hooked up, but this is where we're going to put the Grackle feeding station, and I like this because it goes out a few feet over the porch, and I think that it's far enough away from our main feeder station that they'll be happy over here in this corner, and then when they want to land, my hope is that they'll fly to the palm tree or the platform behind it rather than all over Judy's porch. And if that ends up not being the case and we're not able to distract them like we hope, or they come in larger numbers because they have a really awesome buffet now, then we will cut them off altogether. But we're going to try this method first. So, trying to remember how I pieced it all together. I'm going to put our branch perch back up here. It's going to hold our hummingbird feeder and our bark butter feeder. have to make sure it's all turned right in just a few on our live cam, but I'm gonna put the cage tube feeder back up, and I'm not gonna add the food in it at the moment, but we will add a bigger variety of food in there later. So again, the cage feeder will keep out the grackles, and that can be a feeder where you can put not just safflower seed, a good quality blend for all the smaller birds to fit in. The cage won't let cardinals in, so anything smaller than a cardinal is what will feed from that. We're gonna hang up our hoot with his smashed down lid, so we hope that the grackles will leave that alone. And the hummingbird feeder's still already full, so we're gonna hang that back up. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna open our bag of safflower, which I should have
I think there's scissors in the thing.
Oh. And because it's fall and the birds aren't eating as much, plus now it's raining outside, I'm not gonna fill the feeder up all the way. During this time of year, when you are putting up your feeders, if you just want to keep them about half full or 1/4 of the way full, that's kind of a good thing to do to keep the feed from going bad before the birds eat it all. Little there, little there. Okay. We got lots of fun bird watchers here. And dog, cat,
the
dog.
dog's watching. Yeah, dog.
All right, and now the dinner bell's going back up with its newly added cage. Once they finish the safflower on the inside, we're gonna put in a different seed cylinder. All right, and then lastly, the last thing we were gonna add on there was our bark butter feeder that we might have to take the perch off of. Because the grackles have a hard time clinging, but they are really crafty, so we're gonna see how it goes. A lot of times we get so much feedback from our customers, and I've been working at Wild Birds for 14 years, which is crazy. So I've heard all the stories, and a lot of times it's trial and error. Sometimes something works great in someone's yard and then not so great in the next yard. So even though we do have a pretty good idea on what's effective and what's not, still sometimes you gotta try things out. So when you put the bark butter on, I'm using a knife here, but you can also use a fork. And I like to put like a few little grooves in it. It seems silly, but that helps them pick it out and find it a little faster. So because this is a new feeder and it's a new type of food, I'm only gonna put it on one side to start with until they find it and they eat it a little heavier.
Do you need an S hook?
And I do have an S hook, so I'll be right back. Oh my gosh.
There's a grackle right there.
You can hear them. It's been crazy out here. I mean, people will come in and say, it's like the birds in my backyard. And it really is. I mean, my mom, she lives on James Island, and she has red-winged blackbirds like crazy. And unfortunately, they're even tougher than grackles because they don't mind the taste of safflower. So I haven't been over to her house yet to solve that problem. So we may rearrange once we take a peek at our live cam and see how that all looks. But this is going to be our hopefully grackle-free station with some things that we might have to tweak in the future. Now,
I wonder if removing the water makes a difference.
oh, I will talk on the water too.
Oh, you can barely
So-
see it, but there is an alligator way out there on the grass. See down there?
Oh, I don't know if there's
Yeah,
any
you probably
possible
can't.
way you guys can see the alligator, but there's one hanging out there. There's so many cool things. We just saw Rosie at Spoonbill fly over too, and I was asking Judy when they leave this area, and she said last winter they stayed here year round, so those birds are really neat, and ones that we didn't used to see that often around here, and they're getting more common. I know a lot of people over the last couple of years are even seeing them in neighborhood ponds and all. So, I mean, things are changing a little bit, but it's still kind of cool to see those new birds. All right, so this is our Grackle tray. Right now it just has sunflower pieces in it. But since they went through and picked out all the peanuts, we're just gonna give them what they like, and I'm gonna dump some peanuts in here too. My cat ran. Hands are like slippery.
Oh.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to disappear from you. I'm sure you enjoyed the sounds of the Grackles though. They're talking to me. They're gonna be really happy with us, but hopefully they'll be happy enough to treat us with some respect and stay off the porch and quit pooping all over it. So, we're just gonna turn this in and hang out their tray. They are staring us down. And put that back out there. All right, so I think that kind of concludes our Grackle intervention for today. There's another little hanger there, so if Hoot on our mini dinner bell or the bark butter feeder doesn't work out, we're gonna relocate it to that hook there. And just make this all safflower and cage tube feeders. And if the Grackles keep making a mess on Judy's porch, then we will cut them off altogether. But hopefully we will train them properly and they will be well-behaved Grackles that enjoy their food, leave our feeders alone, and quit pooping all over the deck here. So thanks for joining us, and I'll type up all those tips at a later date and do them as a Facebook post. Thanks.